There has been a major development involving WWE Champion Seth Rollins. It has been reported by ESPN and confirmed he will be sidelined for the next 6 to 9 months. Subsequently, WWE has announced that a tournament will be held at Survivor Series on November 22nd to determine a new WWE World Heavyweight Champion. This week's show was acquired prior to this news, and there will be no further mention of Rollins' injury or the WWE Heavyweight title tournament.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar. Ching, ching, bling, bling, cut the chatter. You ain't talking money, then you're talking no matter. Ching, ching, bling, bling, patent pockets. Take a dollar, dollar, can a damn soul stop it? Here comes the new kid on the block. Hold on your bets, here's where the buck stops. See, first of all, I'm stepping out on my own. About time I elevated to claim my own throne. Success in my blood.
It's all about the money, and you put the money on Super Show 5. That's right. Shotgun Shan and the Commissioner Sean Cunningham. We're back together. The boys are at it again. It's the new Super Show, and we're really talking about one thing in general here, and that is Survivor Series. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing. People write in and they say, Shotgun Shan, we want to know more about you. We know a little bit about you. We know what you like. We know what you don't like. We want to know a little bit more intimate detail of your life. And I'll give you a few right now. Number one, I don't like wearing pants. That's kind of known, but still. Number two, I like to dance like a robot. Number three, I sometimes cry at Downton Abbey. And number four, I love traditional Survivor Series matches. Whether it's 4-on-4, 5-on-5, I love them. And really, what we're seeing happening now in the world of WWE is a sudden re-interest, resurgence, whatever you want to call it, in the fact that there will be traditional Survivor Series matches at the pay-per-view. And we've already gotten a little preview on Raw. I couldn't be happier. Sean, I am so happy to be here with you today. How are you doing, buddy?
Oh, everything is good. Life is exciting. All those wonderful things. And I can't agree with you more about seeing the resurgence of the 5-on-5 or 4-on-4 Survivor Series matches. It was one of my favorite things growing up and will always be. And I remember when they went away from that, how angry I got, even as a teenager.
Me too. It was a bit depressing when they went away from it, wasn't it? Because suddenly Survivor Series was just another show, and oftentimes not a very good show. Like, I always felt like even if the teams weren't great and the show wasn't that great, you'd still see some stuff you'd never seen before. When they went away from it, I thought, geez, like, what's the point of even having the show now?
Well, at least Survivor Series was, again, something different, and that was the whole premise behind it.
Mm-hmm. And especially now with so much programming, they really need these different things to come up. They have such a volume of content that's out there. To really have things that are distinguished and defined as different, I think really helps them. But, we're going to get into that when we get into it. The fact of the matter is, you and I have not talked in a while. And no. I know that on the show we haven't really, I at least have not been on the show since Hell in a Cell.
No, I realized that you haven't. Luke and I got together and did something, but I think it was actually before that, and then we haven't done anything since.
Well, then I think it's probably the time to at least, I don't think we need to dwell on it, but at the same time, I'm going to give this overall assessment that the show is far better than I expected it to be, and I think it deserves at least a little bit of time.
It does. It definitely does.
Some significant things came out of that show, not even with the matches themselves, but the return of Alberto Del Rio. Were you surprised?
I was genuinely surprised when they did the U.S. Open Challenge, and there's Alberto Del Rio.
About 4 or 5 days before, I'd read something on one of the news boards, and somebody said something about Alberto Del Rio in talks with WWE, and it was really just a little tiny sideline. And I remember rolling my eyes and going, who made that up? Del Rio's never coming back. And I didn't hear any more news about it after that. So when he actually showed up, I was obviously shocked, but I was also like, wow, that was actually accurate. So what do you think brought Del Rio back?
I think maybe probably Vince. Really, when you consider this situation, we've spent some time talking about it, I honestly think Vince likes guys that kind of have the guts to stand up and say, I'm going to say what I feel like, and whatever you think about it, too bad.
It's funny. You're right. That's exactly it. He seems to respect that, even if it makes his life more miserable, which I think is kind of funny.
The other interesting thing, I think, is, and I've read this a couple places, that he would like to try and reestablish some kind of Latino star. Because you don't have Rey Mysterio right now either. You don't really have a strong Latino character at all.
That's true. And even when they had Ray, I mean, he was on the shelf so much, and they did so little with him. I think you're right. They've softened that market quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I think having Del Rio in, and I mean, having the Lucha Dragons in, I don't think that they're quite as accessible as a guy like Alberto Del Rio is, just because of their point on the card right now. But at the same time, I think you're right. This is Del Rio's the right guy. I hear a lot of flack from people going, "Oh, Del Rio," as if they don't think he's a big deal and he's somehow a boring wrestler. And I always felt like Del Rio held a very special place on the card because he was one of those hands that could seem to pull a really decent match out of anybody. And the better his opponent, the better the match would be. So I was happy to have him back. I think you need guys like that who are solid, who can work the middle of the undercard, and can work the main event as well. And I think Del Rio's flexible enough in that way. Plus, he's a great talker.
Well, and both those points are in. Plus, I get the sense, even in the last 2 weeks, do you notice a slight directional change? I'm starting to see a directional change more toward wrestling, more toward guys who can work. What this time is what I'm going to call WWE LAC Life After Cena.
Exactly, and that's a great way to label it too, because you almost can see the lights going on, the light bulbs going on over the creative head and Vince's head and everyone else going, oh, I think we really better come up with a plan. And yeah, I agree with you. I've seen that. I've seen a lot of things, and I think we'll get into them as we go on, because I've got a lot of thoughts about what's been happening with the product lately. But moving on, I mean, one of the next kind of significant matches on that card was Reigns and Wyatt, which I thought over-delivered. I did not expect them to tear down the house the way they did. What did you think of that match?
I thought I completely agree with you. I thought it really did over-deliver. The only difference that I would have done, and I say this coming out of Sunday night, not knowing what was going to happen the next night on Raw, I really thought it would have been better if Wyatt had gone over coming out of the match. Looking back on it, knowing what happened at the end of the show and what happened Monday night, Reigns going over makes total sense.
Yeah, I mean, they obviously had a bigger plan for Wyatt, which I'm finding very interesting and intriguing going forward. But I agree, at the time I was kind of like, Bray loses again? I don't know. Because, I mean, Bray seems to be one of these guys that can weather it. I mean, he can lose to top or guys that are near the top and still have a shine to him. And I think as long as they don't do this for too long and they keep putting him in with good guys, he's going to be all right.
Well, I look at it this way. I've talked to a few friends of mine who are not heavy wrestling fans, and I asked them a series of questions. One of them was, is there anybody on TV that you, as a casual wrestling fan, want to see get their butt kicked every single week? And the answer was Bray Wyatt, across the board.
That's awesome. Awesome.
So as a casual fan, if that's happening, Bray Wyatt's doing his job.
Bray Wyatt's one of those guys that, again, a casual fan, even somebody who's just glancing through will remember him. He has a look, he has a thing that he does, and he has a persona and a charisma about him that I think makes him stand out. So I just hope that the long-term plan for Bray Wyatt is something big. But for right now, he's certainly cutting his teeth with the right people. They're putting him in with the right guys, at least.
He's learning.
Yeah. And not only is he learning, but he's also learning how to put over guys that are not as good as him, as he did with Reigns. And that's not a shot at Reigns. I think Reigns has come along quite a lot.
Long way, clearly, and they hope they think that too.
Yeah, I do. But Wyatt, I think Wyatt really helped him through that match. Lots of great spots. It was far more brutal and exciting than what I expected. I didn't expect it to go quite as hardcore. I mean, Hell in a Cell is always going to be marred by some of those kind of crazy Hell in a Cells that they did at the beginning, with people falling off the top. Obviously Mick Foley, but in the original one, Shawn Michaels took a little tumble off the side. And all the different angles that they pulled trying to get guys out of the cell. So you're always going to be waiting for something like that. And when it doesn't deliver, maybe, you feel, even if it's not really justified, feel a little let down. But I thought this one delivered. They did what they did, and they did it well. So good for them.
Totally. And I was shocked by the use of tables in that match.
It can be overkill, but with those two guys, I think it worked. Another significant match, and I'll say it's significant. I didn't really love it, but I thought that it delivered what it needed to, was Seth Rollins and Kane, and again, I kind of rub my eyes in disbelief and go, Kane's in a main event, well, not necessarily a main event, but upper card main event match, and he keeps chugging on along. I don't think that Kane has lost much in the ring, and it kind of tied up that storyline. I mean, what are your feelings on Kane at this point?
I think you need to start treating Kane not in the same reverence as you do The Undertaker, but in the same way. You're dealing with somebody that's been in the company for how many years? 20 plus years. He's been in the company almost now, 20 years. And he's not going to sit there and say he's getting older and can't do it, because clearly he still can't. But he doesn't need to be on TV all the time. Yeah. And that character, even the corporate K character, was kind of getting very stale and stupid.
The funny thing is with those two guys, and I agree with you, is that both Seth and Kane were kind of overexposed in the past, few weeks, months, whatever. Those are two guys I feel like, as much as I love Seth, kind of seen more of them than I wanted to, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
No, well, those were two names. Remember, I talked about a conversation I had with some casual friends of mine who are casual fans, and those were two names that came up, were Seth and Kane.
Well, there you
go. And the Kane conversation was, why is there two characters? Why is there split personality? This is stupid. The Seth thing was not as, wrestling oriented. It was, when Seth comes on, I change the channel. When Seth talks, I change the channel. That's not a good sign.
That's not a good sign. But then again, I think if Seth talked less and you saw him less, I don't think it would have the same effect. I think he's kind of getting on people's nerves now, and not in the right way.
No.
The big match of the night, though, Taker and Brock, did it again, and I tell you, no disrespect to the Undertaker, but I watch his matches these days and I hold my breath, because they seem to be determined to put him in with guys that can rip him in half. And following what happened to Sting in his match with Seth Rollins a couple months ago, I would be very nervous if I was booking this match. And they still delivered a brutal, brutal match. What were your thoughts on that match coming out of it?
I liked the match, and I thought they did everything they did to make Brock look like the super heel, to do something to make Taker still look credible at almost 50 or over 50 now. And it was a fight, and I wondered, okay, you're doing 2 cell matches in one night. What were you going to do in the second match that we haven't seen before? And they found something that we hadn't seen before.
That's true. Look, here's my feeling on the show, on the match. As much as the match, if you take it out of context from everything else, I thought delivered and was good and was entertaining and certainly brutal. I still find the whole way that this feud's been booked to really just have my head spinning still. Yeah, they did Brock doing the low blow to get the finish, but was that a heel Brock thing, or was that a getting back at Taker for what he did before thing? And why did Taker do it before and act kind of like a chicken? And, who is actually supposed to be the justifiable party in this? I mean, you kind of have to identify one person and go, he's the guy who's doing the right thing and he's the guy who's doing the wrong thing.
Well, they never did, and that's an issue of the writing.
But it was strangely booked. I wasn't quite sure if I was supposed to think that Undertaker was as yellow-bellied, as JR would say, or what we were supposed to be thinking. But.
Well, it's Brock beat Undertaker down, and then the more important thing seemed to be where they're going after, because they stayed on the air a lot longer once the match was over than I thought they would. And you're getting the thank you Taker, and he's fighting to his feet and everything. And I'm thinking, are they going to go off? Or are they going to let this run for a few minutes? I'm looking up at my clock, and I'm like, they got some time, they can let it go, but I thought they're just going to go off the air. And then all of a sudden, the lights go out.
And then we get the emergence of what will be, reigniting the Bray Wyatt Undertaker feud, or is it bigger than that? Where do you think that's going?
Well, I think it's going to an 8-man Survivor Series match for sure.
I certainly hope it is. When you have one faction that actually has 4 guys in it, you really need to put them. And I'm going to do a little spoiler for people here, but I guess that from what I was reading on SmackDown, they actually did do a 4-on-4 with the Wyatts against the Primetime Players and what was the other team? I can't remember now, but they put.
Okay, so they continued that. They started that last week. They did an open challenge on Halloween. For Halloween week, and it was Cesaro and Ryback and 2 others whose name escaped me right now. But so they're going to continue to do that. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so they're going to continue going on, and I guess they're really building. I guess maybe just reintroducing. Oh, sorry, it was Sin Cara, Kalisto, Darren Young, and Titus O'Neil. So it was the Lucha Dragons and the Primetime Players. So I guess what they're really trying to do is condition the fans to kind of accept, or at least maybe reintroducing to people that haven't been watching those traditional matches. So I guess based on that, we can really assume that there's going to be at least one, hopefully more than one, traditional Survivor Series match at Survivor Series. And my toes are tingling, friend. We'll get into our Survivor Series memories in a few minutes, but I really feel like there's enough interesting characters right now that you could put together some great teams. But yeah, so that was Hell in a Cell. Overall, by the time it was done, we had Alberto Del Rio back, and Undertaker's now in a big feud with the Wyatt family. And as you said, looks like it's going to a 4-on-4. I'm assuming Kane and Undertaker are on one side. Who knows who they'll get to work with them? But
that was what I was going to ask you. Who do you think the other two players are going to be?
I think it's going to be two lesser players, and I'll tell you why. I have a feeling that the whole story here is going to come down to Taker and Kane against the whole Wyatt family 4-on-2. So I think whoever they bring in are guys that are going to be expendable. I don't know who it'll be. I mean, there's a lot of guys in the middle of the card you could throw in there that wouldn't be hurt by losing to the Wyatt family. But I think that's what it's going to come down to.
And then we came back to move everything forward. You did everything in Hell in the Cell, and I kind of came out of that show feeling, okay, there's clearly a direction. Are they going to stay with it? And for the most part, they have. Yeah. And I'm surprised. And I'm happy with what I'm seeing.
I'm happy with what I'm seeing too. Now, for folks, we're gonna deal with the post Hell in a Cell Raw now, just to kind of make a few comments on that. And the post Hell in a Cell, they did a fatal 4-way for the number one contendership by having a bunch of preliminary matches before qualifying matches.
You're making people either have to go back and watch your show or pay attention, or you're going to miss something.
Yeah, somebody's done something right. And again, you're right. It feels like there's a direction, and it feels like there's a focus that wasn't there. And a focus on the right people. I mean, I find that Kevin Owens lately has been wildly entertaining and extremely well booked in playing that he's in there with the right guys. He's looking strong, but he always finds a really nasty, weaselly heel way out of it.
Oh,
so you get the delivery in the ring, but you still get that bad taste in your mouth that you want to have with a really bad heel.
Kevin Owens was another name that came up in my discussions over the last 2 weeks. The consensus was they hate Kevin Owens to the point where they want to see him killed.
That's what you want, right?
Yeah. It's good to know that the character works. And just as an aside, did you see his promo from the pre-show on Sunday? Standing outside of Staples?
I didn't see it, but I'm going to have to go back and see it.
Go back and find it because it was good. It was on the kickoff show, and it's him standing outside of Staples Center in front of the Magic Johnson statue.
Oh my God, we'll have to go back and see it.
You need to go back and find it. I'm not going to give anything away, but I was like on the floor laughing and cheering at the same time. It was so good.
This guy's so inspiring, isn't he? I mean, he's a fantastic promo. He has a different body type than what you would expect out of WWE, and yet delivers on every level. I mean, talking acrobatic moves. There's all these people take these stupid shots at his cardio, which really bugs me.
Well, you know what? The only people taking shots at his cardio are within the company.
I know. That's what I mean. Like, it's just, you can tell it's coming from somebody, and I think we know his name starts with a V. But, yeah. But the whole point, I mean, when you go back and watch his matches with Cena, they went on forever, and Owens did not slow down. So anyway, regardless, the guy's got a great in-ring presence. He's got a great character, and the boy can move. So thank goodness for Kevin Owens. He's kind of signaled a whole new revolution, I think, as far as the guys that are coming in.
I'm very excited about the guys coming in. That's a whole other discussion, is guys coming up from NXT.
I know, and NXT has become such a hotbed now. You know, you used to have a few top guys there, but now when you go and watch the show, you can pick about every other guy that's on TV, or girl, of course, and you can say,
guy's going to come.
Yeah, you can start to formulate when they're coming up and what they're going to do. So good for them. What do you think of Tyler Breeze coming up now? I mean,
I was a little shocked when I first heard about it, and now that I've seen it, I'm like, they're doing the absolute right thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he's got a thing, doesn't he? It's been done before, but not recently. And, you know, you got the pretty boy guy, and I think he can pull it off. He's good in the ring, and he's dedicated enough to the part that I think he's going to do all right.
Well, and the other thing is, I find that these NXT guys are more successful when they come up and are put in programs with established talent rather than, oh, let's bring up 2 or 3 of them at once and put them all in programs together.
Exactly.
So that the fans don't know who they are and don't pay attention, and it just gets lost.
Well, Dolph's the absolute right guy to put him in with, because A, the fans love to watch Dolph because he generally delivers, and so their focus is going to be on him anyway. And B, I mean, there's a nice meshing of styles there between the two of them, and I think it actually makes both of them look good. I mean, I didn't think that would be the case. I thought it would all be lopsided with them trying to put Tyler over, but I think that they're doing a good job. So
they're doing a good job trying to balance it, and I'm happy to see some of these NXT guys who've been there for a long time before it blew up get their chance now.
Exactly. So anyway, dealing with that Raw, by the end of the night, Roman Reigns was your new number 1 contender. Not a huge surprise, but I would say that I was a little bit surprised with not only the fan reaction to him, but my own reaction to Roman. I mean, I've been trying really hard to give Roman a chance.
Yeah.
And I do believe that he deserves it. Seems like a nice guy. Yeah. He's certainly got tons and tons of potential. It's not fully realized yet. And obviously we've been vocal about the fact that he was pushed further than he should have been, sooner than he should have been. But I think that, in watching his past few matches, I think Roman's kind of clicking. And I think there's 2 things that are going to happen with Roman. One, I think he's going to continue to get better. He's going to continue to get opportunities that maybe he hasn't quite completely earned, but he's going to do well with them. And the other thing is, I think he's going to, at least in the shadows, be plagued by the people who refuse to like him anyway. I think it's funny that there's talk of them, and this isn't necessarily, I mean, to their credit, this is not coming from the office saying we want him to be the next John Cena. This is all speculation on other people's parts. But people talking about him being the next John Cena. And, I mean, if you really think about that, do you really want another John Cena? Do you really want another guy who's loved by some and hated by others? I mean...
No, well, you want a guy who is over, but unfortunately with wrestling, that only truly happens once in a generation. The last guy that was on top, that was truly 100% over, was Rock.
That's true, but you remember how Rock got there. That's what was going to be my next point. I mean, for goodness sakes, Roman's actually related to him. So you don't have to look very far to see the example. Rock did not get over by being a face.
No.
Rock got over by being, in fact, Rock got ripped worse than Roman for being a face.
Yeah.
Rock got over by being a wildly entertaining heel. That fans couldn't keep hating, even though they wanted to.
Yeah.
That's how you did it.
And I'm warning you right now, if they don't do something to keep Kevin Owens in his spot on the card, you're going to have a problem in 3 months.
I agree. I agree. Yeah. Because you can see the way that things are starting to shape up now. And you can see the way that people are starting to react to different people. And I think they're getting some momentum with Roman, but I hope they've got something really good planned for him.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Because
there's a lot of guys I hope they have stuff planned for.
Dean Ambrose, my God. Dean Ambrose wasn't even on the Hell in a Cell. Dean Ambrose.
So I read this before the show. How do you go from main eventing the year prior to not being on the show the following year?
Then again, there's another thing here. They're building up this thing with Reigns, and I just can't help but feel that by the time Reigns gets his title shot, here's what I'd like to see happen. Reigns, they build up this title shot, build it up. Reigns gets it and blows it and is frustrated. The next week or within a few weeks, Ambrose gets some random title shot and takes it. And then Reigns is kind of like begrudgingly there with him, sticking by him, and you can see the resentment building. And then Reigns turns on Ambrose, and then everything goes to hell. And Reigns, I think...
They teased something similar to that earlier in the summer, I want to say the end of May, when they did the Elimination Chamber show, and Ambrose got the title shot, and he didn't win the title, but he stole it.
Yeah.
And then Reigns was kind of there as his mouthpiece, which made no sense.
Exactly, yeah. I just hope they aren't looking at the momentum that Reigns has built now and saying, "This is it. We're ready to light the fire under him. We're going to put a rocket under him."
No, they're going to put a rocket under him, but it won't go off until WrestleMania.
Yeah. Or it'll just backfire and blow up.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's possible too.
That's true. Listen, and then we might as well, before we get into our Survivor Series talk a little bit about this week's Raw. Again, they had a Survivor Series match, as we talked about before. It was really tight.
Oh, so good.
There were so many people in this match that I love. And I make no secret, and I am not ashamed to say that I adore the New Day. I cannot look away when they're on TV.
No.
And so when Seth took on New Day, especially with Xavier Woods back, who I think is just the savior of that group, not that the other two aren't entertaining, but I think Xavier wasn't tarnished in the way that the other two were, simply because they hadn't done much with him. And so he just kind of freshened it up. But when they put together, here's your Survivor Series team. This should have been at the actual pay-per-view.
Yes.
New Day, Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins against Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, Ryback, and the returning Usos. I mean, how could that not be a fantastic match?
That was ridiculously good.
It was, and they gave it so much time too.
Yeah, they gave it respect.
They gave it the time that you would expect on an actual pay-per-view. So I was impressed, and in the end, it comes down to Roman, Ambrose, Ryback, the Usos, their team winning anyway. And it was pretty exciting. Although I was a little bit put off by the fact that it ended on a DQ, with Seth getting himself DQ'd.
Yeah, that was lame, but I understand what they're trying to do.
Yeah, they didn't want to give away a proper ending, but they certainly gave
too early.
Everything. They gave away everything leading up to it. But again, that feeling I had when I finished watching that was that old feeling I used to have watching the classic Survivor Series matches. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not just a nostalgia buzz, because I love the idea behind the build towards, or I love the idea behind the traditional Survivor Series match. But certainly, I was getting my memories from the old Survivor Series, and which leads us to our next, Sean, because I know you are a wrestling historian. You probably have an endless supply of ideas here of your favorite Survivor Series matches, but I want to know what are your top bunch of favorite Survivor Series matches or moments, and you can't include the gobbledygooker in it.
No, no, you know what? I don't think I ever would. It's okay. See, if I have to think about it, I like you lean toward the 4-on-4 matches. There was the Randy Savage Hulk Hogan match in '88, where they were teammates, but you could tell that there was something coming there. Mm-hmm. And the tease was very clear on screen when you saw it, that you knew it was going to blow up down the line.
That was when they really solidly started showing you the problems, right?
Yeah.
Because I guess you didn't see it as much at SummerSlam.
No,
you started to see it at the Survivor Series. At the Royal Rumble,
it was completely. Yeah,
but didn't go off yet. Like that, when you think about how long they built that angle, I mean, they could afford to back then, because they were only on TV a very small amount every week, and then they'd had their pay-per-views, but they'd have it like 3 months apart, right? Yeah. So they could afford to do a slow burn, but it always felt like made the angle seem like a huge angle, right?
Oh, totally.
But I love that match too. Although, the one thing about that match, when I can't remember exactly what the teams were. I know it was Hogan, Savage, Coco Beware,
Hillbilly Jim, I think.
Hillbilly Jim. And who's the fifth? Was it Hercules?
Oh, it might have been Hercules. I
can't remember now. And then on the other side, it was the Twin Towers.
Yep.
I remember the Red Rooster was on.
Yes, the Red Rooster. But it was on. Yeah, I'm like, what?
It was that kind of mismatched teams where you got your top guys, and then you've got these kind of low card. Now, I mean, it makes for a good match, but can you imagine the logic behind that if this was all real? So Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan, number 1 and 2 in the company, go, who do we want in our team? Oh, what about Hillbilly Jim?
Yeah, really.
Coco Beware.
Yeah, really. It's like those your choices. It's like, oh, no.
You could have flipped a quarter, and anybody in the locker room that it hit would have been better than Coco Beware and Hillbilly Jim. But,
I think, yeah.
But they picked them, I guess, just for the easy eliminations, and that's it. I'll tell you, when I sat down to think of my favorite Survivor Series moments and my favorite Survivor Series matches, one of my favorites of all time was the 1995 Wild Card match.
Oh,
and folks,
yes.
If you haven't seen this, find some way. I don't know if it's on WWE Network or nowhere. It is. Go back and watch it. what happened in this match was that the teams were put together randomly, and what it ended up being were guys that were in feuds with each other being on the same team against guys that they were actually either partners with or friends with or whatever.
Oh my god.
So it was Shawn Michaels, Ahmed Johnson, British Bulldog, and Psycho Sid. And remember, this was heel British Bulldog and heel Psycho Sid.
Yeah.
And they were against Yokozuna, Owen Hart, both of whom were teammates with the British Bulldog.
Well, and tag champions at the time, I think.
Yep. And Dean Douglas, and the team captain was Razor Ramon, who was IC champion at that time, who was in a feud with Dean Douglas.
Yeah.
It was a crazy match. I mean, I loved it because of the sheer wild energy of it. Not only were these guys having to try and function as a team, but they were having to do it and somehow retain their relationships with the people on the other team who they were fighting against, who were actually their teammates. So it was cool. You had guys on the same team attacking their own teammates, and then sometimes, working with guys from the other team. It was just crazy. I mean, you couldn't do it all the time, but
No.
for what it was good.
It was so good. Now that I've been reminded of that match, I would have to go find it later on.
It really was such an exciting, interesting match. And that was at the time when Ahmed Johnson was on the rise.
And they were putting the rocket on him large.
They were putting the rocket on him. He headlined one pay-per-view against The Undertaker? He fought somebody. I can't remember who it was.
Think about that now. Hang on.
It was one of the In Your House pay-per-views. Now, it wasn't.
It was supposed to be, and he got hurt. He was supposed to headline against Taker.
Right.
After he'd gone heel and joined the Nation.
Right.
After he'd come back from an injury. Then got re-injured, and they gave the match to Vader. And it turned into a thing.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, Ahmed at that time was a big deal. And he was kind of cool. I mean, he wasn't a great wrestler, and I kind of got the impression he was just banging the crap out of people. Oh. But he was kind of cool. But that was at the point when that was going on. Shawn Michaels was, in his face time. And you had some really cool stuff going on. Yokozuna and Owen Hart were a tag team, which I love that tag team.
That tag team was awesome when you go back and look at it. It's like, I remember the biggest thing was like, Ahmed had literally just come to WWF, and they had him run out, like, he'd been in there he ran out to save somebody, and the big thing was he actually picked up and body slammed Yokozuna, and he was only the second person ever to do it.
I always loved watching that when anyone would try to do that, just because of the sheer physics of lifting up a guy that's not only that heavy, but that round. I mean, that was the thing with Yoko, is that he wasn't that tall, but he was so big. I couldn't imagine. I mean, it's one thing to lift up, I would imagine, and I'm not pretending I can do it, but it'd be one thing to lift up a 300 or 400 whatever pound guy who's really tall, so you've got arms and legs to kind of balance him out. But to lift a guy who's only, what was Yoko, like 6'1", or 6'1", whatever, and like 500 or I never knew exactly how much Yokozuna weighed, because it
would change.
Yeah, it would.
It would change.
You'd get used to the kind of fairy tale scales that they used for people in wrestling, where they'd say they were this weight, this height, blah, blah, blah. And then when it came to a guy like Yokozuna, who was legitimately massive, I had no real concept of what he actually weighed. But I can tell you this, it was a lot.
Yes.
He was like big. Do you remember? I think it was Vader broke Yokozuna's leg and they had to take him out on a forklift. Do you remember?
Yes.
I remember thinking that was a bit demeaning, but
it was necessary. I think.
It was necessary. I don't think anyone else could have carried him. But anyway, that match to me was just brilliant. And I think it came down. I think at the end it was like Michaels, Ahmed Johnson, and Bulldog. And Bulldog kind of begrudgingly won the match, or was part of the winning team. But they ended up coming out ahead, and it was an exciting match.
Oh, that was so much fun.
Another one that I love, and that when I think of Survivor Series, and I think of kind of the whole idea behind it, was the very first Survivor Series was Randy Savage's team against the Honky Tonk Man's team.
Oh, yes.
Randy Savage, Jake Roberts, Ricky Steamboat, Brutus Beefcake, and Jim Duggan against Honky Tonk Man, Hercules, Danny Davis, Ron Bass, and Harley Race. Again, it's one of those teams where you got a few guys thrown in there that you can tell are just fodder. But on Savage's team, you have 3 guys with legitimate beefs against the Honky Tonk Man.
Well, that's the way they built the match. The one thing I will say back when they built those matches in the 80s was they made sure, even if guys weren't in a feud before Survivor Series, by the time you got there, they at least had teased that all of the guys had been in feuds with all of the other guys, so it made sense.
Exactly. Well, and again, because of the timing that they had to build these, they would take the time to really introduce all these different rivalries and build them. And so that, by the time you got there, it really felt personal. In this day and age, you can't do that because you've got a show, every month. You got something happening every month. So you can't kind of pollute that by starting your Survivor Series build too early. But back in those days, it was pretty clean and easy, and you could really see these feuds building up. But the thing I loved about that match, as I said, you had three guys with legitimate beefs against Honky Tonk, and Honky was a big cowardly lion type character.
And worked so well for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I love that kind of guy. I love that kind of character. I wish they'd reintroduce another one now. Yeah. Another guy where you look at it and you go, he has no business being a champion. He has no business being at the top of the card. And yet, the guy's beating everybody.
Well, that's kind of what they're doing with that. That's what they want to try and do with Seth, but Seth isn't as convincing.
Well, because Seth is good.
That's the whole problem.
The whole problem with Seth is that we've seen, at least from his work in the Shield, and certainly if you watch NXT or Ring of Honor or anything like that, you know exactly what Seth Rollins is capable of.
Hell, even the match with Cena at SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, everything. But since his heel turn, they've kind of tried to tone down his style and make him a little less appealing. But I think everybody knows what Seth Rollins can do. And that's
the problem you have with it. See, when I think of other members, I go back to the 5 and 5 2. 2001, the height of the invasion that was a failure, but still, you had Team WWF and Team Alliance.
I love that match.
And this was the last match. And the next night they did we're merging everything now, but that Survivor had so much build and so much tension. I couldn't help but get sucked into the drama of that match, even though I knew what was going to happen.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's always great when you have a match like that has a real basis and a really, really strong story, kind of tying everything together. And then again, like, as you said before, by the time they got to the Survivor Series, you really felt like all those individual members really did have a beef with each member of the other team.
Oh, and they did.
Yeah, and it is difficult to do that now, especially because, as I said, like, you've got 4 weeks before the next show. You got to introduce it pretty darn quick. But with Survivor Series coming up, Sean, what are your predictions? It hasn't really shaped up for us yet, but we kind of know.
We got a couple of matches. We got a couple of things.
What do you think's going to happen? And we don't have to really talk about specific matches if you don't want to, but I mean, the overall direction coming out of Survivor Series, or what's going to happen at Survivor Series, what are your thoughts?
I think this is their trigger, and I'm a little shocked because to me it seems a little bit early to do it, but this is their trigger where they start setting up for WrestleMania in my mind. Like, they're looking 6 months down the road. That's the vibe I get from watching the TV, is that they're looking forward, which I'm excited for. I think we're going to see Seth and Roman again at some point, either before WrestleMania or likely at it.
So you think Seth might hold on to it till WrestleMania?
Possibly.
I'd be fine with that too,
Yeah.
I really would, if they've got enough for him. I mean, Seth's one of those guys, and the way that they've booked the character and the way they've built the character is now, if they're going to keep Seth with the title until WrestleMania, they've got to keep him busy between now and then, if he's going to be even relevant. Because as we've said, people are getting a little sick of him. He's on TV too much, doing too little. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd be fine with that, because it's certainly, I mean, they're going to need the build, to finally take it off him. He's been holding it for so long. But I hope that they can keep him busy and keep him engaging. Even just for Roman, if they're really going to have Roman take it from him at WrestleMania, then even just for Roman's sake, so that it means something. Because if it's just a fizzled out ending to this, I think.
I hope not. The other question, clearly they're going to do stuff with the women's division for a while. I don't know what their long-term plan is, but, I like Charlotte, but Charlotte was never my choice.
Who was your choice?
My choice originally when this started was Paige, and then of course I have my biased choice, the one who I would have picked all along, who I thought was more charismatic and had a better look, was Becky.
Exactly. You know what? I had that in my notes, and I didn't know where I was going to bring it in. Becky Lynch has actually added this whole other dimension to not just the Divas wrestling, but just to wrestling in general, in that her energy, especially in her promos and her energy when she hits the ring, is different than anybody else's. I actually burst out laughing some of the time during her promos.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's silly, funny, clever, but it never becomes a joke where you think, oh, Becky's just a comedy player.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Not in like the sort of monster, woman, not like Nia Jax or anything like that. She's more like, she's just intense. And I like that level of intensity. It's funny. She can be quite funny and intense, but then she can also be pretty tough in the ring and intense. And it lends itself to both levels. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been thinking that week to week. As much as Charlotte is a great wrestler and certainly needs to be, one of the foundations that they build around.
Yeah.
I think Becky's there.
Now.
Becky's their big face. That's what. Maybe they haven't figured it out yet, but I think Becky's their big face.
Well, the other thing, and I hate to say this and sound very sexist about it, but I think to have a women's champion who happens to be pretty, I think does matter to some level.
Yeah, exactly.
And I find Becky to be pretty too. So.
Well, yeah, and exactly, and that's the thing. It's not just that; it's that she just has a look that is very, very distinctive. I mean, that's one thing that's happened with the women's division. Not necessarily right now, but that's one thing that they've been guilty of in the past, is sort of a homogenous idea of what a woman's supposed to look like in professional wrestling. And there's certainly been times we can point out in the past where you could take pretty much anybody from the Divas or women's division and, just switch their heads around. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But now, they are building these strong personalities and these different looks. And I think Becky, see, the thing about, I hate to reduce it to this, but this is what's worked for so many people is, whose picture do you put on a plastic cup and have people want to buy it? And it's not just about attractiveness. It's about distinctive look. And just that kind of, there's a level of intensity even just to her look that I think is going to get her far.
And the other one who I think is going to get a push out of this at the end of the day is Sasha Banks too. Yeah.
Sasha's another one, right? They've kind of fumbled her a little bit since everyone else came up. She kind of seems like the odd woman out, at least on WWE programming. When they've taken her back to NXT, she's just
my gosh
there. But
well, speaking, can I bring up a point with you? Speaking of NXT, I heard the show that you did after the NXT Respect show, and you seemed very confused about. You seem very upset that they'd given them flowers, Bailey and Sasha flowers.
I was, and I wasn't necessarily upset. I just had questions about whether that was really something that they would have done for the men as well. And I know they would in Japan. I'm just saying in North America, do you give a woman athlete who you are treating like a male athlete flowers? Well, what were your thoughts?
Couple of arguments that would further that point. When the Williams sisters win the U.S. Open or whatever tennis tournament, they get a trophy and flowers.
Yeah.
In defense of that. And secondly, I think what they're trying to do with NXT is build a culture. They're trying to build something much bigger than just wrestling. I think they're trying to parallel it after that Japanese culture and show all these athletes, whether it be the guys or the girls, respect. And I think that's why they did it.
Well, I didn't disagree. And I didn't even bring it up as if to say, I think this is wrong and this is sexist. It wasn't even that. It was just a thought and a little thing that was kind of gnawing at me and saying, well, why didn't they give, anybody else flowers? And I know, and Luke said, it's a cultural thing where you give a woman flowers as a sign of respect, and that's true. But I guess I'm just kind of wondering is at what point do we stop distinguishing a female athlete from a male athlete and just treat everybody the same as though it's almost like if you give somebody flowers, except in Japanese culture. If you give somebody flowers, it's almost kind of, I don't know, it diminishes what they did. And I guess that was how I felt. I don't know.
Well, I would agree with that if you were looking at it in a strictly WB context. When you look at all the other garbage they've put out in the last 15 to 20 years in terms of the way they've treated the girls, and I'm not disputing that at all. But the way that I think Sasha and Bailey and a lot of these newer girls are being treated, I have no problem with it.
Yeah,
I think it is meant as a sign of respect.
And I see what you guys said. And again, I wasn't really arguing with it. It was just something that stuck in my guts. What do you think? Paige. Now we've got Paige at Survivor Series. It's Paige and Charlotte at Survivor Series, right?
It is.
What do you think is going to happen there? I mean, I don't think it's time for Charlotte to drop it yet, but what do you do with a girl like Paige, who kind of has too much potential to sit in second place?
Well, I think that's the whole problem. And I think eventually what you're going to see, I wouldn't be shocked if Paige wins, just because the way they had positioned Paige when this whole thing started back in the summertime was she was this one screaming for change, screaming for rebellion, screaming for, I need help, we need to get the Bellas out. You know, I think she should have been the face to begin with, because that's the way you built the storyline.
Yeah.
And then you brought in a third person.
I think they muddied the waters quite a bit with the so-called Divas Revolution. I mean, as we talked about before, the real heart of the Divas Revolution started. I think that might be the Grime Minister. Is he calling in?
Yeah, I think he is.
Oh my gosh, Grime Minister Luke Force?
Are we answering? Oh, we gotta answer the phone. Who has to do that? Oh, what happened? Are you there?
Forwarded to an automatic voice messaging
What the hell
system.
happened?
7056329. This message is not available.
Oh God, what
At
do we
the
do
tone,
now?
please record your
I don't
message.
know.
I didn't know
Let's-
that.
To leave
Let's
a
record a
callback
message
number,
for
press
him.
5.
Wait, where's the message? I didn't leave a message for him. Luke Force, this is your attorney calling. That business with you dropping your pants and running around at the old folks' home has got you a bit of hot water. Call me right away, and you better have some money put away. Thank you. I don't know if that went through or not.
I
But
think it did.
what were we talking about?
How they kind of messed up the whole Divas thing, not
Oh,
with
yeah,
Paige.
Exactly. I mean, they really muddied the waters. You know, it started out, I think the Divas Revolution started out so cleanly on NXT in that it just happened organically, and suddenly the girls were having the best matches on the card. And in typical WWE fashion, they tried to package that up and push it off as something that they were doing, and you know, put a big name on it and brand it for themselves. And I don't think it's really been, you know, as strong on the WWE programming. It's been more treated like an oddity than as sort of a new standard. So I really hope that they can keep at least a level of momentum going until all these new girls can kind of have their own moment on the top roster and really show the audience, you know, who they are. The problem with these sort of three threesomes that they put together is that a lot of people have had to share time that they probably should have had in the spotlight on themselves. I mean, Becky again.
Yeah.
I think Becky kind of needs to break away from everybody else for a little while and kind of have her own moments, because she really seems like Charlotte's sidekick now, especially with Paige turning on them.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to package that character.
No, and I just got the sense that the way they built that division up, or the way they built Australia, to me it should have been Paige.
I guess maybe what they felt was Paige has already done her whole thing with AJ, and she'd had her moment at the top, and what they were trying to do was really put these other guys over, you know, the new girls over, and thinking that that's what people wanted to see. But I agree with you.
Let's see if this works. Oh, that's not
Hello,
Oh, there he
Hello.
is.
Ladies
gentlemen. How are you?
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Grime Minister, Luke Force. We are so thrilled to have him on the show. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. Hold on one sec. I'm just going to turn this off. There we go. Much better.
There we
I'm
go.
doing very good, guys. You know, I figured it was definitely something where I should check in with you. Of course, it is Super Show, and Super Show without the Grime Minister is kind of like WrestleMania without the Hulkster, brother.
Yeah, except that's a bad comparison, because actually some of the best WrestleManias have been without the Hulkster brother.
I would actually guarantee we're going to have a WrestleMania this year without the Hulkster brothers, but yeah, that's probably the worst comparison I could make. But
Listen, buddy, we've been talking all things Survivor Series, and one thing that we were just doing a few minutes ago was we were talking about our favorite Survivor Series moments. I have a feeling yours may be similar to mine, but I was just wondering if you had any Survivor Series moments, either matches or things that, you know, just events that happened. And as I said to Sean, you can't count the gobbledygooker in this. But what were your favorites?
as much respect as I have for Hector Guerrero, I will not include the gobbledygooker. The first, obviously, being a kid with the VHS, growing up in the VHS era, Showtime Video for all my Port Hope people. Shane, you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Renting the very first Survivor Series from Showtime Video, and you pretty much are on a waiting list because they've only got 1 or 2 copies. And when that baby comes in, you pop that in. I mean, that was an incredible show. I mean, we've never seen anything like that. A whole show of not just multi-man matches, but again, these elimination-style multi-man matches. It was something completely different, much like the Royal Rumble, the very first time we ever got to see that on VHS. So I definitely remember some of those first matches on that card, particularly the Macho Man versus Honky Tonk Man team elimination match. You guys have some fond memories of that match?
We do. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, about the beauty of having Honky Tonk face a team that had 3 guys with legitimate beefs against him in Savage, Jake, and Steamboat.
I was just going to say the beauty of that match, too, but that was the first time we ever saw Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat on the same team.
Yeah, and that was really when Randy Savage had only just was just kind of sort of a face. So it was kind of fun to see that play out.
Did they not even tease in the commentary, like, wait, are Steamboat and Savage going to work together? Like, they kind of, I remember them kind of teasing it, saying, are they going to be okay?
And they used to do that a lot. They did that with Hogan and Orndorff. Was that the same year as well?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And, they worked that angle with both the Savage match with Steamboat and the Hogan and Orndorff thing. You know, how much can these guys trust each other, et cetera. So I always thought that was a cool little twist. Got to reference the next year, the main event with the Mega Powers and everything like that, just from the standpoint of that was setting up a year-long angle that you really saw planted for the very first time. And Shotgun Shan, God bless you, you were the first one to point it out to young Luke Force, because I probably would have missed it. But there was this very slight, subtle moment where Savage is celebrating and then all of a sudden just gives a dirty look, maybe for 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And then just back to celebrating. And that was the very beginning. Right? Am I right about this?
You're totally right. But here's the thing. Knowing what we know now about the way Savage was and how paranoid he was, I almost wondered now if it was like, was that part of the angle or not?
Yeah, really.
It was that weird mix, right?
Yeah.
That's true, and that's the thing. Like at the time, you didn't really understand what was going on behind the scenes and what the personalities were and what the combustible elements were. But it's funny, you know. You can look back on that and go, you know, did this spring from reality, or did it just imitate what was really going on behind the scenes? We both singled out those matches as some of our favorites. Look, we also talked about the wild card match from '95, which I always loved. And we also talked about, and this is something that maybe you can comment on as well, is how it was kind of depressing when WWE decided to abandon the team matches and Survivor Series just became another show.
Yeah, and with the exception of just a few matches in Survivor Series history after that point, they never really treated those multi-man matches the same way again. Most of them were kind of just throwaway. You know, it was just, we're filling up a card, we're filling up 3 hours with matches, and there might be sort of a little bit of angle stuff, but for the most part, Survivor Series was a pretty missable show for a lot of the times when they did bring back those elimination-style matches. So they never had the luster that they did in the early days, that's for sure. But when sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, the first, I want to say 2 years of Survivor, it was a 3-match show. Like, that to me, when I look at that, when I think about that now, that's crazy.
The other beauty of those early shows was the tag team Survivor Series matches, too. Did you guys spend a bit of time talking about those at all?
No,
we should have, because you're right. You're right. What was the first one that they did? I just remember that the Young Stallions were a big part of it back then.
Basically, it was all the baby faces versus all the heels, and all the managers out at ringside on the heel side.
But
right, and I'm pretty sure the Bulldogs were in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bulldogs were in it.
But it was 5 teams against 5 teams, wasn't it? Wasn't it 10 versus 10?
Yep.
I just remember it was a million people out there.
Yeah, no, what it was, you're right. It was 5 teams versus 5 teams, and if your partner got eliminated, you had to leave too. Yeah, if your regular tag partner got eliminated, you had to leave too.
The Demolition and the Powers of Pain double turn thing is a pretty memorable thing from Survivor Series.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Because that was one of those things you didn't see a lot, where the manager would totally, you know, abandon his team and go with a new team.
And you'd flip both guys in one match.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the Bret Hart Steve Austin thing.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. The only drawback I ever found to those tag team Survivor Series matches is because of the sheer volume of the guys in there. You had guys getting pinned very quickly in ways that didn't necessarily help their credibility. If you can remember, guys would get pinned, after about 2 minutes in the ring or 3 minutes in the ring. And so that part I can remember at the time going, oh, he wouldn't have got pinned if this was a one-on-one match. But still, you're right. They were exciting and fun. I seem to remember, I don't know if it was the first one or the second one, it ended with Paul Roma doing like a sunset flip off the top rope to Greg Valentine, didn't it?
That sounds right.
I remember they do the things with the people you would never expect to be there at the end, and that was something else that was pretty cool. I think the Young Stallions got pretty far one year, were maybe the last team on their side. I also remember the time, the whole Demolition Powers Bane thing too. The fact that they were in there with the Conquistadors at the end.
That's right. And not like Edge and Christian 2000, but the original Jose Luis Rivera. It's like why they were even in the match. I remember them being in the match going but they're jobbers.
But that was the beauty of needing warm bodies in those days, though, is you could throw those guys in and get something.
I remember one year, I think it was the second year, Jake the Snake had a team in a Survivor Series match that had 2 jobbers on it because guys had gotten injured.
Oh, yeah.
Jim Brunzell, who essentially become a jobber at that point.
Yeah.
And Scott Casey or something.
Oh, that's right. Luke, Sean and I were talking about how at that second Survivor Series, how Hogan and Savage, they sat down to make their team, and somehow the 2 top guys on the card could only get for their teammates Hillbilly Jim and Coco Beware, and I can't remember what the third one was. I'm like, seriously, with all the pull you have, the only guys you can get are Hillbilly Jim and Coco Beware.
Hey, that Coco, though, he sings a hell of a theme song.
He does. I think Coco missed his big moment because I think he had a lot more going on than they gave him credit for. But.
And as far as Jim Brunzell goes, hell of a high jumper.
That's true. If you needed a guy to jump, you go to Jim.
One final match too I want to reference. I'm going to get off here. I just wanted to call everybody. I think I speak for all the listeners as well. You guys did a hell of a job on the last one you did together. And I can't wait to go home and listen to the playback of this one. And everybody really appreciates the great work. You guys have great chemistry, even though you never really worked as a team, a 2-man team, very often. So I just wanted to, again, give you guys a lot of praise and say you're doing a very good job on this Super Show special event.
Well, thank you, sir.
Much.
And it's been a pleasure for me too, because Sean and I, we just don't get to spend nearly enough time together. So it's nice to have this little bit of time.
But, of course, the Owen Hart turn on Bret Hart.
Oh, that's right.
But anyways, we watched that pay-per-view, and I did not see the Owen Hart turn coming at all. And I probably should have. They probably set it up very well on TV, but I remember being completely blown away by that one and thinking, this will never work. Owen Hart can't be a heel.
Yeah.
Okay, are we referring to the 93 match or the 94, the towel thing?
I'm talking about when he was on the team with all the other brothers. The fireman and the substitute teacher and all that stuff, right?
And Owen was the only one that got eliminated, right? Am I remembering this correctly?
Yep. Yes.
And then he threw a fit. Now, he didn't completely turn at that show, though, did he, Sean?
That's true.
No,
Oh,
it didn't happen until later, but I mean, that 90% of the turn was done there. It was just the waiting for it to come true.
The ultimate turn actually happened, I think, in January of the next year when he kicked Brett in the leg.
Yes.
Right. They got back together briefly and smoothed it out, but everybody knew it was coming.
Yeah.
So anyways, but I just wanted to say, guys, WWE has actually been pretty damn enjoyable to me lately. The Raws, of course, they're still long. There's not necessarily a whole lot of direction, but at the same time, the last 2 weeks have been filled with a lot of good wrestling, I thought, a lot of good wrestling matches. And let's face it, they have a lot of good wrestlers, especially with a lot of the people they've been bringing up from NXT, and that's going to continue. So the shows themselves, I think, have been a plus for the most part. I thought Hell in a Cell was one of the more memorable Hell in a Cell pay-per-views of all time, and a pretty creative show really up and down the card. So I'm sure you guys have already covered that. We won't get into that. But just, of course, because Luke Force is checking in, I got to just give you a quick plug for the New Japan pay-per-view on Saturday. This is Power Struggle, headlined by Shinsuke Nakamura versus Carl Anderson for the IWGP IC title. Also,
will be available in English.
Yeah, I haven't heard a lot about. I'd heard originally they were going to be doing that for all of the shows moving forward, all the big shows. So I'll give you guys an update, but I haven't heard much about Stryker and Kelly doing anything else. So maybe that was a one-time deal. So anyways, also on this show, though, which has really been a huge highlight over the last few weeks, Sean, I know you've probably seen some of the matches. Shane, I'm not sure, but they've been having this Super Junior Tag Tournament, and Ricochet and Matt Sydal are a rock star team.
Oh, my God. Even just those two names together.
They had their match with the Time Splitters in round one. It's basically a single elimination tournament. It's not like a G1 style round robin. It's just a single elimination tournament. And they defeated the Time Splitters in the first round in an incredible match, and then defeated the Young Bucks in another incredible match. But these guys are like absolutely amazing. Their finish is a double shooting star. And these guys are just incredible, a rock star team. So they will be facing Roppongi Vice in the finals of the Super Junior tournament at Power Struggle this Saturday.
My God.
Well, I'll definitely be seeing that one. Definitely.
So it should be a really fun show. But thanks for having me on, guys. And we will talk to you again very soon. I'll be back in action, back in studio. And again, we love everything you guys are doing. Great chemistry, great hosts. Shotgun Shan, Sean Cunningham, I'm out. Peace.
Thanks, buddy. Well, Sean, what do you say? Do we wrap this up on that note? I think we've covered what we have to cover, unless you've got something.
Well, I had one other thing to ask you about, because I know that we've talked about it. You have your hot little hands on the WB 2K16 video game.
Oh, my God, Sean. Look, I don't want to rub it in, but I have to tell you that this game is probably the most fun I've had playing a wrestling game in a very, very, very long time. I mean, just to start it off, you've got a roster that's just wild. They've got like 120 guys on the in-game roster. And from there, I think with the DLC, it's going to be closer to 160. The only noticeable missing exceptions to the rule that are missing here are obviously CM Punk and Hulk Hogan and Alberto Del Rio, for obvious reasons. Those three guys are gone. And Rey Mysterio as well. But the rest of the roster is massive. And the game just plays like a dream. Now, I'm assuming you've seen previews.
I've seen videos and done looked into some stuff, but I know that you've got your hands up. Now, some of the videos also were the showcase mode, which is the going through history stuff. Are you more playing those ones, or are you playing the matches with the new roster?
I haven't actually played through the showcase yet. I generally leave those. To be perfectly honest, I can't really help myself when I get into it. I can't stop myself from going through the roster of current guys and having all my dream matches. I'm obsessed with Kevin Owens. I can't stop playing as Kevin Owens. His pop-up powerbomb's perfect. Absolute perfection. They've just added so many great guys. There really isn't anybody missing. I mean, I know that Samoa Joe's coming in one of the DLC packs. The Dudley Boys aren't in there, but they came very, very late. And they are certainly missing the main NXT Divas, which is quite curious to me. I know that Becky's not there, Charlotte's not there, Sasha's not there, which is weird.
DLC could fix that, though.
They could, but they've already listed the DLC and they weren't on it. So I know.
Oh, wait, there was all this. Oh, wait, I remember reading the unrest before the game came out. Yeah. Now that I think of that, there was all kinds of why aren't they there?
Yeah, but the good news is that the Creator Wrestler's so good now. I've already downloaded tons of people. I've got a perfect CM Punk, a perfect Alberto Del Rio that have been made by somebody else, where they've done a face scan and they've actually put the real person's face on, and everything's authentic. So, I think probably we'll talk about it in more detail down the road when I've had a bit more time to play some of the other stuff. But for now, I'll just give it a huge thumbs up. Huge thumbs up. I couldn't enjoy it more.
I wanted to ask you, so I'd seen some things online and know that you're very excited about it, and I've read nothing but good reviews online anyway, so that's good to know.
It is, and I tell you, I'll give you a more full review once I've been through. As I said, once I've been through more of the stuff. My obsession when I first get the game is always to go through and fix everybody's movesets to make them, exactly the way I want them. I honestly, the first 2 or 3 days, I barely played any matches at all because I was just in the create a moveset, just tweaking everything and finding all the new moves and geeking out over everything. But, the more I get into it, I'll let you know. But yes, thumbs up for me, huge endorsement for me. And yes, I'll give you my money, 2K. Just keep it up, man. Keep it up. Anyway, buddy, on that note, I think we exit.
We shall do so. Stage left, as it were.
Yes, exactly. And it's been a hell of a show. It's been a super show. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed it, Sean. I hope we get to do this again.
I hope we do too. And I always think the end of the year is coming.
Yeah, we need to do a really serious end of the year recap. Like a serious sit down and marathon through all of our favorites, all of our thoughts, where we think things went right, where we think things went wrong, where we think things are going. Yes. Let's put it on paper right now.
Yes.
But that's going to happen in the
That's going to happen at the first of 2016, I would think.
Exactly.
Something to that effect.
Well, there we go, folks. We are out of here. It's been Super Show 5. And I am Shotgun Shan, your impromptu host for this show. I am joined, as always, by the Commissioner Sean Cunningham. It's been a hell of a show. Sean, I wish you the best.
Same to you, sir.
And take care, folks. Remember,
peace, love, and wrestling audio revolution.
Sometimes love feels just right. It feels so real. It feels just like a power driver. Yeah, a power driver. You're right beside her. Your heart's on fire. She got you hot wired.